All right, so what quadrant? So let's go ahead and get started. So this is 0, 90, 180, 270, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 500, this is 360. So if we add 90 to 360, we're at 450 plus 90. We're at 540. So it's going to be in quadrant 2. Negative 280, so remember for negative, the quadrants are still the same, but we go clockwise, 0, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and negative 360. So we'll be in quadrant 1. All right, find a positive, so we're going to add 360 to this, and we get 160 degrees. We're going to minus 360 a number of times to see until we get to a positive angle in between 0 and 360. So first time I get 482, I'm going to do it one more time, and I get 122. Convert the following angles to radians, so we do that by doing times pi over 180. So in my calculator, I'm going to use that ABC button. I'm going to type in 180, ABC 480, and then flip it. So that's 3 over 8. Remember that every radian, when we're converting, has a pi. Times this guy by pi over 180. Now this time I don't have to flip it because the smaller number's on top. So I'm going to do negative 135, ABC 180. And hit enter, and I get negative 3 pi over 4. All right, for the next one, convert the following to degrees. In order to do that, we times it by 180 over pi. The pi's cancel, so in my calculator, I'm going to do 5 times 180, hit equals, divided by 4. I get 225 degrees. Again, I'm going to times this by 180 over pi. So that's negative 360 degrees. All right, so find the value of x. So we're going to use that acronym SOHCAHTOA. We're going to label what we have. This is what's given to us. This is opposite that. This is the hypotenuse. So opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So the sine of 34 is opposite over hypotenuse. We're going to put a 1 underneath there and cross multiply. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 220 times the sine of 34, and I get 123.0. For B, again, this is the angle that's given. This is opposite that. This is adjacent. So opposite and adjacent is tan. So the tangent of 44 is opposite over adjacent. We're going to put a 1 under here. We're going to cross multiply. Now this time we don't get the letter by itself right away. So we still have to do one more step to get there. So B is going to be 23 divided by the tangent of 44. And that's 23.8. And the last one of these, here's the angle that's given. This is adjacent to that. This is the hypotenuse. So that gives us cosine. So the cosine of 37 is adjacent over hypotenuse. Put a 1 underneath. Cross multiply. Again, this is going to be 2 steps to get that A by itself. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 24 and divide that by cosine of 37, and I get 30.1, rounding to the nearest tenth here. All right, for the next set of questions, it's asking for angles. So remember to find angles, we're using inverse. Sine inverse, cos inverse, tan inverse. We have to hit our second button on our calculator. We don't cross multiply either when we're finding angles like we do when we find sides. So that's theta. This is adjacent to it. This is the hypotenuse. So theta is cos inverse adjacent over hypotenuse. So in my calculator, I'm going to hit second cosine. I'm going to do 15 divided by 17, close the parentheses, and I get 28.1 degrees. Please round to the 10th. For letter B, this is theta, this is opposite theta, this is the hypotenuse, so that calls for sine inverse. So sine inverse, opposite over hypotenuse. So in my calculator, second sine, 10 divided by 26, close that, and we get 22.6 degrees. And the last guy, this is theta, this is opposite it, this is adjacent to it, so that's tangent. So theta is tan inverse opposite over adjacent. So second tangent, 29 divided by 24, and we get 50.4 degrees. Again, round to the nearest 10th. All right. State the quadrant which the angle lies, so all students take class. So for this one, we'll do that. All students take class. So the cosine is positive. So the cosine can be positive here and here, not here or here. And the tangent's negative. Well, the tangent's not negative there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We are in quadrant 4. For the next one, all students take class. 1, 2, 3, 4. Secant's positive. If the secant's positive, that means the cosine has to be positive. So again, these are out. Tangent's positive as well. That's out. We are in quadrant 1. Letter C. All students take class. 1, 2, 3, 4. So cosecant is negative, so that means that the sine is negative. So the sine is not negative here or here. And secant being negative means that cosine's negative. So we are in quadrant 3. All right. Evaluate, so we're going to times this by 180 over pi. Pi's cancel, so we get the cosecant of 90 degrees. So remember, when we have actual degrees, we use our coordinates. So cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so it goes alphabetically, cosine, sine. So it's just 1. Reciprocal of 1 is 1. All right, for B, cotangent of pi, I'm going to change this to degrees. So that's pi. So again, we're using our coordinates because it is on the 180. Silly goose. And that's also wrong. It's also for 5 o'clock in the morning. All right, here we go. This is 0, -1. All right, so cotangent, so if tangent is y over x, cotangent would be x over y. So my cotangent would be -1 over 0. Cannot have a 0 in the denominator, so no solution. And the last guy, let's change this guy to degrees. In my calculator, I'm going to do 7 times 180. And then I'm going to divide that by 6. And I get 210 degrees. Oops. So this is 0, 90, 180, 270. So 210 is here. If I do 210 minus 180, remember we always go back to that x-axis. This is 30 degrees. So this would be 60. Across from 30 is 1. Across from 60 is root 2. Across from 90 is 3. So we're doing cosine, so that's adjacent, which is this, over hypotenuse, so root 2 over 3. Remember, this is our vertex angle, or our angle that we're using. It's always attached to our x-axis. Reference angle. All right, graph the following, sine and cosine graphs. So first we need to find our amplitude, which is the absolute value of the first number you see, and our period, which is 2 pi over b. Remember, this is your A, this is your B. So 2 pi over 2 equals pi. Remember that your period, when there is no phase shift, is your ending point. So we fill in our period and our amplitudes. Half of $1 is 50 cents, or pi over 2. Half of 50 cents is a quarter, and 75 cents is 3/4. So for this, because the 4 is positive, we're going to go ahead and start right here on the at the origin, reach our peak, go through pi over 2, reach our trough, and we're done. Notice this is negative in front, so when our first hump will be facing downward. My period is 2 pi over pi. Remember never to include the variable there, just the letter and or pi. So my endpoint is 2. Half of $2 is $1. Half of $1 is 50 cents. In between $1 and $2 is $1.50. My period is, my amplitude is -1/2 and +1/2. So here, now again, remember we're starting down because our amplitude, or our A, was negative. Alright. Number 11, cosine 4 pi. So a C, again, my amplitude's negative, so we're going to start on my y-axis down low. My period is 2 pi over 4 pi, which is 1/2. So my endpoint is 1/2. Half of a half is a quarter. We have an eighth and 3/8. Alright, my amplitude is 2 and -2. It started out negative, so we're going to start here, go through, and end. For number 12, my amplitude is 1/2. Positive, first hump's going to be up. Ooh, my period is 2 pi over 1/2. So we keep change, flip it, and we get 4 pi. So 4 pi is my ending point. Half of 4 pi is 2 pi, 1 pi, and 3 pi. Positive 1/2, negative 1/2. We start here, we go through, come down, go through, and come down. Alright, number 13, cosecant. That's the reciprocal of sine, so we're going to use that to help us. So my amplitude is 2. My period is 2 pi over 2 pi, which is 1. So $1, 50 cents, a quarter, 75. Oh, I keep wanting to put a pi in there. So silly. It's amazing what your mind wants to do. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and use sine as a dotted graph to help us graph these. So we throw in those asymptotes. And then the actual cosecant graph are the humps on top of the dotted humps. Alright, so notice this is negative. My amplitude is 2. My period is 2 pi over 1/4. So we keep change, flip that. We get 8 pi. So half of 8 is 4 pi. Half of 4 is 2 pi. 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? This is 2. This is -2. So we're going to start down here. So my first hump is going to be down. Asymptotes go in. And the actual cosecant graphs are on top and bottom of the humps. Alrighty. Secant So secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so that's what we're going to use to help us get there. It's 1/2 a pi, 1/4 of a pi, 3/4 of a pi. Alright, so we're going to do a dotted cosine graph. It starts down because of the negative. Draw in our asymptotes. Draw in our humps, remembering that the graph goes along the asymptotes. Next one, my amplitude is 4. My period is 2 pi over 4, which is 1 pi over 2. So half of is 1/4, half of 1/4 is 1/8, and 3/8. So this is 4, this is -4, positive secant, so we're going to do a positive cosine graph to help us. Throw those asymptotes in. Here come the secant graphs right along those asymptotes. Alright, so on to unit 3, solve each equation. We're going to distribute. So 8x minus 5x plus 1 equals 2. 3x plus 1 equals 2. 3x equals 1. X equals 1/3. Here we have to get all the bottoms the same and drop them. So this needs a 5, this needs a 2, and this needs a 2 as well. So we have 5 times x plus 9 equals 46 minus 2 times x minus 3. 5x plus 45 equals 46 minus 2x plus 6. Let's go ahead and bring this 2x over. 7x plus 45 equals 52. We minus 45. 7x equals 7. X equals 1. When we're adding, we just combine like terms. Please remember to put your real number before your imaginary number. So we have 6 4i plus 5i. Find the products. Oh, let's go back to here. I thought is that a plus or was that a negative? Let me erase this. Oh, it was a plus. I was right. Okay. Find the products. Distribute. So I get negative 16i minus 48i squared. Remember, I squared is -1. So that's going to be a positive 48 minus 16i. Put your real number before your imaginary number. For here, these are conjugates because one is minus, one is positive. So we just do the F and the L in FOIL. The O and the I are going to cancel. So the F is 25. The I is negative 16i squared. Remember that I squared is -1. So 25 plus 16 is 41. And 25, we're going to multiply by the conjugate, which is 2 plus I. What we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. Now these are just the F and the L on the bottom because they're opposites. So 4 minus I squared. On the top, I get 4 plus 2I. So that 4 plus 2i is going to stay. This becomes -1. So we get 4 plus 2i over 5.